What you are about to hear is something that political analysts said would never happen, something that historians will write about for the next century, and something that is sending shockwaves through every single corridor of power in Washington, D.C. right now as we speak. Just moments ago, the United States Senate erupted into absolute chaos as multiple Republican senators broke ranks in what can only be described as an unprecedented political earthquake, signaling that they may be willing to support impeachment proceedings against a president from their own party. This is not a drill. This is not speculation. This is happening right now, and the implications of what we are witnessing could fundamentally reshape American politics, global power dynamics, and the entire world order as we know it. If you think you understand what is happening in Washington, I promise you, the reality is far more dramatic, far more dangerous, and far more consequential than anything the mainstream media is telling you. Stay with me for the next few minutes because what I am about to reveal will change the way you see everything. Before we dive deep into the explosive details of what just happened on the Senate floor, I need you to understand exactly how we got to this unprecedented moment. You see, politics in America has always been a blood sport, but what is happening right now goes beyond partisan warfare. This is about power, betrayal, and the kind of political maneuvering that would make Machiavelli himself take notes. For months, tensions have been building within the Republican Party, tensions that the media largely ignored or dismissed as minor disagreements. But those of us who have been paying close attention knew that something much bigger was brewing beneath the surface. The cracks in the party's unity have been widening with each passing week, and what we witnessed today was not a sudden explosion, but rather the inevitable result of pressure that has been building for a very long time. Now, let me paint the picture of what actually happened in that Senate chamber, because the footage alone does not capture the full weight of this moment. Senator after senator rose to speak, and as each one took the microphone, you could feel the tension in the room reaching a breaking point. The gallery was packed with journalists, staffers, and political observers who knew they were witnessing history unfold in real time. The whispers started when three senior Republican senators were seen huddling together before the session began, their faces grave and their body language suggesting that something major was about to happen. And then it did. The first senator to break ranks delivered a speech that will be studied in political science courses for decades to come. He spoke about constitutional duty, about the oath of office, and about a line that, in his words, had finally been crossed. But here is where the story gets truly fascinating, and this is the part that most people are completely missing. This is not simply about one policy disagreement or one controversial decision. What we are witnessing is the culmination of a much larger power struggle that has been playing out behind closed doors for years. You see, within the Republican Party, there have always been different factions with competing visions for America's future. There are the traditional conservatives who prioritize fiscal responsibility and limited government. There are the national security hawks who believe in American military strength and global leadership. There are the populist insurgents who want to burn down the establishment, and there are the business-oriented pragmatists who care primarily about economic growth and market stability. For years, these factions have managed to coexist under a fragile truce, united by their opposition to the Democratic agenda. But that truce is now shattered, and the consequences will be felt not just in Washington, but in capitals around the world. What makes this moment particularly explosive is the timing. We are at a critical juncture in global affairs, with tensions rising in multiple regions simultaneously. The balance of power between the United States, China, and Russia is more precarious than it has been since the Cold War. Economic uncertainty is gripping markets worldwide, and now, at precisely this moment, the American political system is threatening to implode from within. Foreign leaders are watching these developments with a mixture of alarm and opportunism. In Beijing, strategists are undoubtedly analyzing how this chaos might be exploited to advance Chinese interests. In Moscow, officials are likely celebrating what they see as evidence of American democratic dysfunction. And in European capitals, allies who have long depended on American leadership are wondering whether they need to start making alternative plans. Let me break down exactly what allegations are being discussed behind closed doors, because this is where things get really serious. The concerns being raised by these Republican senators fall into several categories, each one significant enough on its own, but devastating when combined. There are questions about executive overreach, about decisions that some senators believe violated constitutional boundaries. There are concerns about foreign policy moves that were made without proper consultation with Congress. There are allegations about the handling of classified information and national security protocols. And perhaps most explosively, there are whispers about financial arrangements and conflicts of interest that some senators believe cross legal lines. Now, I want to be very clear here. These are allegations and concerns that are being raised, not proven facts. But the fact that members of the president's own party are willing to voice these concerns publicly represents a seismic shift in the political landscape. The reaction from Trump's allies has been swift and fierce. Within minutes of the speeches on the Senate floor, loyalists launched a counteroffensive on social media, in press conferences, and through friendly media outlets. They are framing this as a betrayal, a coordinated attack by establishment Republicans who never truly supported the America First agenda. They are calling the dissenting senators traitors, rhinos, and worse. They are mobilizing the base to flood these senators' offices with phone calls and to threaten primary challenges. This is political warfare at its most intense, and it is happening in real time. The question now is which side will blink first and which side has the numbers to prevail. But here is what I find most fascinating about this entire situation, and this is something that most political commentators are completely overlooking. The senators who are breaking ranks are not the usual suspects. These are not the moderate Republicans from swing states who have always maintained some distance from Trump. Several of them are from deep red states with strongly conservative constituencies. Several of them have voting records that align with Trump's agenda over 90% of the time. These are not natural rebels or attention seekers. These are serious legislators who clearly believe that something fundamental has changed, that some line has been crossed that they cannot ignore. That alone should tell you how significant this moment really is. Now, let me take you behind the scenes and explain the mechanics of how an impeachment actually works, because many people do not fully understand the process. The Constitution gives the House of Representatives the sole power to impeach, which essentially means to formally accuse a president of wrongdoing. A simple majority vote in the House is sufficient to impeach, but impeachment alone does not remove a president from office. That requires a trial in the Senate and a two-thirds vote to convict. This means that even if the House impeaches, removing a president requires 67 senators to vote for conviction. With the current makeup of the Senate, that would require a significant number of Republicans to join with Democrats. Until today, that scenario seemed virtually impossible. Now, for the first time, it appears to be at least theoretically on the table. The historical parallels are impossible to ignore. Only 3 presidents in American history have been impeached by the House. Andrew Johnson was impeached in 1868 over his handling of Reconstruction after the Civil War. He survived conviction in the Senate by a single vote. Bill Clinton was impeached in 1998 over perjury and obstruction of justice related to the Monica Lewinsky scandal. He was acquitted by the Senate. Donald Trump himself was impeached twice during his first term, once over the Ukraine affair and once over the January 6th Capitol riot. Both times, he was acquitted. Richard Nixon famously resigned before he could be impeached, once it became clear that Republicans in the Senate would vote to convict him. That last example is particularly relevant right now because it shows that when a president loses the support of his own party, the calculus changes entirely. What we are witnessing today has echoes of those fateful days in August 1974, when senior Republican leaders went to the White House and told Nixon that his support in the party had collapsed. The difference is that Nixon faced a hostile Democratic majority in both chambers. The situation today is far more complicated, with Republicans controlling key levers of power but facing an internal civil war that threatens to tear the party apart. The question that everyone in Washington is asking right now is whether we are witnessing another Nixon moment or whether this rebellion will ultimately be crushed by Trump's formidable political machine. The economic implications of this political crisis cannot be overstated. Markets hate uncertainty, and there is nothing more uncertain than a constitutional crisis in the world's largest economy. Already, we are seeing volatility spike in after-hours trading as investors try to assess what this means for the stability of American governance. The dollar, which serves as the world's reserve currency, could face pressure if foreign investors begin to question American political stability. Major policy initiatives, from budget negotiations to trade deals, could be thrown into limbo. Businesses making long-term investment decisions will have to factor in the possibility of dramatic political changes. And all of this comes at a time when the global economy is already facing significant headwinds from inflation, supply chain disruptions, and geopolitical tensions. But here is where I need you to understand something critically important about how power really works in Washington. What you see on the Senate floor, what you hear in the speeches and the press conferences, is only the surface level of a much deeper game. The real action is happening in private meetings, in phone calls between power brokers, in negotiations that will never be made public. Right now, as you are watching this video, there are conversations happening that will determine the future of the American presidency. There are deals being offered and rejected. There are threats being made and countered. There are alliances being formed and broken. The outcome of this crisis will not be determined by constitutional arguments or principled stands. It will be determined by cold, hard calculations of political power and self-interest. Let me explain who the key players are in this unfolding drama, because understanding the personalities involved is essential to understanding what might happen next. The senators who have broken ranks include some of the most influential figures in the Republican Party. These are not backbenchers or newcomers. These are committee chairs, former presidential candidates, and legislators with decades of experience and deep networks of support. Their decision to speak out was not made lightly. They know the risks. They know they are inviting the full fury of the Trump political machine. They know their careers and legacies are on the line. The fact that they moved forward anyway suggests that they believe the stakes are high enough to justify the risk. On the other side, Trump's defenders are equally formidable. They control significant media platforms, they have the loyalty of a large and passionate base, and they have demonstrated repeatedly that they will fight with every weapon at their disposal. They are already framing this as a deep state conspiracy, as an establishment coup against the people's choice. They are rallying supporters to stand firm against what they characterize as a betrayal of everything the Make America Great Again movement represents. The battle lines are being drawn, and there is very little middle ground left for anyone to occupy. Now, I want to address something that many of you are probably wondering. How reliable is this information, and why should you trust what I am telling you? This is a fair question, and I want to be transparent with you. What I am reporting is based on what has actually happened on the Senate floor, statements that are on the public record, and analysis from sources who have deep knowledge of Washington politics. However, the situation is evolving rapidly, and new information is emerging by the hour. Some of what seems certain today may look different tomorrow. Politics is unpredictable, and anyone who claims to know exactly how this will end is not being honest with you. What I can tell you is that what we are witnessing is genuinely unprecedented and genuinely significant, regardless of how it ultimately resolves. The international dimension of this crisis deserves special attention because America's political stability has global implications that are often underappreciated. The United States is the linchpin of the international order that has existed since the end of World War II. American military power underwrites the security of dozens of allies in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. American economic power drives global trade and investment. American diplomatic leadership, for all its imperfections, has been essential to managing international crises and preventing great power conflicts. When America is paralyzed by internal political crisis, that entire system becomes unstable. Adversaries see opportunities. Allies become uncertain. The risk of miscalculation and conflict increases dramatically. Consider what is happening right now in various global hotspots. In Eastern Europe, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues, with American support playing a critical role in Ukraine's defense. In the Middle East, tensions between Iran and Israel threaten to escalate into a broader regional war. In the Pacific, China's military assertiveness is testing American commitments to Taiwan and other allies. In each of these situations, American political instability could have profound consequences. Adversaries might be tempted to test American resolve at precisely the moment when Washington is distracted by internal conflict. Allies might hedge their bets, seeking accommodations with rivals rather than relying on uncertain American support. The domestic implications are equally profound. We are approaching a critical period in the American political calendar, and this crisis will inevitably shape the political landscape in ways that are difficult to predict. Primary elections, fundraising, campaign strategies, all of these will be affected by what happens in the coming weeks and months. Candidates up and down the ballot will have to decide where they stand, whether to align with Trump or with the rebels, whether to try to stay neutral or whether to avoid the issue entirely. These decisions will have consequences that extend far beyond the current crisis, shaping the direction of the Republican Party and American conservatism for a generation. Let me now turn to what I believe are the most likely scenarios for how this crisis might unfold, because while the future is uncertain, we can identify the range of possibilities. The first scenario is that the rebellion fizzles. Trump's allies successfully rally enough Republican support to isolate the dissenting senators, painting them as traitors and ensuring that any impeachment effort dies before it gains real momentum. In this scenario, the rebels pay a heavy political price, facing primary challenges and ostracism from the party mainstream. Trump emerges strengthened, his dominance over the party reaffirmed. This is probably the most likely outcome, given the current balance of forces. The second scenario is escalation. More senators join the rebellion, either because new revelations emerge that make staying loyal untenable, or because they calculate that the tide is turning against Trump. In this scenario, impeachment proceedings in the House become a real possibility, and the pressure on Senate Republicans to take a stand intensifies. This scenario leads to maximum chaos and uncertainty, with the outcome genuinely in doubt until the final votes are cast. The political damage to the Republican Party would be enormous, potentially handing significant advantages to Democrats in upcoming elections. The third scenario, and this is the one that most observers consider least likely but most dramatic, is a negotiated resolution. Behind-the-scenes negotiations lead to some kind of deal that diffuses the crisis without the drama of an impeachment trial. Perhaps there are agreements about future behavior, about personnel changes, about policy directions. Perhaps there is an understanding that certain red lines will not be crossed again. This scenario requires compromise from all sides, which seems difficult given the current state of relations. But Washington has surprised us before, and desperate situations sometimes produce unexpected outcomes. What should you, as someone watching these events unfold, take away from all of this? First, understand that we are living through genuinely historic times. Whatever your political views, whatever you think of the various players involved, recognize that what is happening right now will be studied and debated for decades to come. You are watching history in real time. Second, be skeptical of anyone who claims to have all the answers or who tells you with certainty how this will end. The situation is genuinely uncertain, and the honest answer is that no one knows exactly what will happen next. Third, pay attention to the facts and try to separate them from the spin, the commentary, and the propaganda that will inevitably surround these events. The truth matters, now more than ever. The next few days and weeks will be critical. There will be more speeches, more revelations, more twists and turns that none of us can predict. There will be attempts by all sides to shape the narrative, to win the battle for public opinion. There will be moments of high drama and moments of tedious procedure. Through it all, the fundamental question will remain the same. What kind of country does America want to be, and what are the limits of presidential power in a constitutional republic? These are questions that every generation must answer for itself, and this generation's answer is being written right now, in real time, on the floor of the United States Senate. I want to thank you for staying with me through this breakdown of one of the most significant political developments in recent American history. This is exactly the kind of content that we produce on this channel, deep dives into the events that are shaping our world, analysis that goes beyond the headlines and the sound bites, explanations that help you understand what is really happening and why it matters. If you found this valuable, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss our next update. The situation is evolving rapidly, and we will be covering every major development as it happens. Before I go, I want to leave you with one final thought. Throughout American history, in times of crisis, the institutions of democracy have been tested, and they have ultimately prevailed. The Constitution has proven remarkably resilient, capable of absorbing shocks that would have destroyed lesser systems of government. The American experiment in self-governance, for all its flaws and failures, has endured for nearly 250 years. What we are witnessing now is another test of those institutions, another chapter in the ongoing story of American democracy. How it ends is not predetermined. It depends on the choices that people, real human beings with all their strengths and weaknesses, make in the days and weeks ahead. We are all, in some sense, participants in this drama. We are all, as citizens and observers, part of the story. The footage coming out of the Senate today will be replayed and analyzed for years to come. The words spoken on that floor will be quoted in history books and political science textbooks. The decisions made by those senators and by everyone else involved in this crisis will shape the future in ways we cannot yet fully comprehend. This is what makes politics so fascinating and so consequential. It is not abstract, it is not theoretical, it is real people making real choices with real consequences for all of us. Stay informed, stay engaged, stay skeptical, but open to evidence. And most importantly, stay tuned to this channel because we are going to be covering every aspect of this unfolding story with the depth and detail it deserves. This is not the end of the story. This is just the beginning of what promises to be one of the most turbulent and consequential periods in modern American political history. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.